Estou passando nesse podcast para dividir uma informação que fez toda a diferença na minha vida. Quer fazer pós-graduação, mas tá impossível correr de um lugar pro outro?
Pois é, ainda mais com o trânsito.
Então você precisa conhecer a educação à distância do Senac. Sabia que é nota máxima no MEC? E tem diversos cursos de pós-graduação para te levar ainda mais longe. 100% online, sem necessidade de TCC e com acesso direto a todos os professores.
Ah, saber isso fez diferença sim.
Inscreva-se já na pós-graduação EAD. Quer saber? Senac EAD.
It's a common sense recap of the big stories. It's Katz and Cosby on 77 WABC.
Now we have the country's leading economist, the number one economist in the country. We have Larry Kudlow. And on his show, which I was watching before, two big issues. The issue on taxing unsold assets, and the other one was, did green energy fail our country?
Yes, sir.
Well,
Here I am. I'm here.
Tell us, what do you feel like talking about first?
Well, I think that, I think the wealth tax business is very important. And I did interview Jonathan Turley, who is an eminent constitutional lawyer. And, he agreed, John, with the Wall Street Journal editorial that the Supreme Court made a mistake. And in effect, there's two issues here, if I can parse through this, not being a lawyer, although there's a lot of economics in this stuff. One is the issue of taxing wealth rather than income, okay? And I think the court was dead wrong on that. And the particulars here of an international tax are much less important than the constitutional principles. But we don't have a tradition in this country of taxing wealth, and you have to ask yourself, how do you know whether let's say you own stocks or you own art or you own, I don't care, antique.
Wow. Did we lose him on the word antiques? I think we lost him on the word antiques. What do you think of that?
Once again, the voice of freedom has been silenced.
Oh, wait, there he is.
Anyway, you don't know what those assets are worth until a market transaction tells you what they're worth. And that's a very important economic principle.
And these are assets that you bought. Suppose your grandmother gave you an antique, and all of a sudden the IRS comes in and says, see that antique? It's worth $1 million. You have to pay the tax on $1 million?
Yeah, well, some people like Elizabeth Warren would say yes, but you don't know that. I mean, there's no way you can value that properly unless there's a market transaction. In other words, you have to realize the gain or the loss, for example. And income is different. Income is a flow. We know what the income you make $10,000 this year, you make $20,000 next year, you pay a tax on that. Okay, we know that. That's called a flow in economic terms. But a stock of something, it's a portfolio of something, you won't know what that's worth until someone buys it or sells it. There has to be a transaction. Or, to put it differently, you have to realize the capital gain or loss. And I think this is where the court went badly wrong. And, it was a mixed decision, right? There's footnotes. I mean, Turley was going through this. There are footnotes involved, and even the justices who voted for the wealth thing, they hedged their position. Amy Coney Barrett probably was the clearest about the whole thing. But basically, you cannot tax something until it's realized. I mean, that has to be the guiding principle for tax policy. And I think the court muddied the waters. They didn't decide definitively. They muddied the waters. But let me say quickly, you're not going to get this wealth tax stuff on the far left has been around for a long time. There's no majority for it. There's absolutely no prospect of any of these taxes going through.
It's an absolutely absurd concept. How can you tax someone when there's not the funds to pay the tax? And that's not just a question of value.
You have to liquidate the asset to pay the tax.
You have to liquidate the asset at a time you don't want to.
You can't, you don't know the determination of value, which is an economic concept, is you cannot do that until the marketplace does it. Arbitrarily, judges, IRS agents, left-wing senators from Massachusetts, try as they might, they can't do it. There must be a market transaction, or in the legal term, there has to be a realization of the asset. By the way, I just want to say, with respect to capital gains, not only am I opposed to unrealized capital gains, I happen to be opposed to realized capital gains. I don't think there should be a capital gains tax at all. How's about that? Put that in your pipe and smoke it.
We love that, Larry.
Larry, can you expand on that? Why you feel that way?
Because I don't think wealth should be taxed, period. I don't think these assets. I mean, we have an income tax, and the income tax is high enough, and I think the country lacks investment, and it should have more incentives to invest. At the very least, let me say that the capital gains tax today should be indexed for inflation, and it never was. We've indexed the personal income tax, but we never got around to indexing the capital gains tax, and we should have. And some people think, by the way, that the executive, the president, has the authority to do that. That's a long-time legal debate. But Congress should just pay. We should have indexed capital gains. But I don't think we should pay a tax on capital gains. I don't think we should pay a tax on wealth. I think wealth leads to investment. Investment leads to growth and jobs and opportunities. And I think we have enough. We pay too much in taxes
Larry,
as it is.
Let's go to another real topic, and that is the annualized GDP growth in the third quarter last year was 4.9%. It was estimated to be 1.9% in the first quarter this year, and now it's down to 1.3%. Are we headed for a really slow economy, and would it be going into a recession? That is quite a drop.
Well, where'd you get the 1.3? I'm just curious.
That's the revision of the estimate for the first quarter.
Q1.
Yeah,
Q1.
Q1, yeah. Right.
Well, okay. So I happen to think we're in a slowdown mode. The Atlanta Fed GDP tracker they've got the second quarter at 3. I think that's too high, but we'll see. I want to say on the slowdown point, we had very bad retail sales number earlier this past week. I think it was this past week. I lose track of the time. We also had a very bad business investment number. But today we had the worst housing sales, existing home sales, in 30 years. And we've seen a continuous slump. Also, we've had record prices. The average price, I don't know, it's over $400,000. That's a record. During the Trump years, it was about $200,000, $250,000, and a mortgage rate of roughly 7%. The point I'm making is housing is unaffordable. For average families and for young people, housing has become unaffordable. And, of course, the Biden regulations and public housing have made the story even worse. But I think it's going to be a big debate issue. Inflation has outstripped wages. That's kitchen table issue. You're going to hear a lot about that in the CNN debate Thursday. But I think housing should be on the table. The numbers were just appalling. The worst in 30 years, okay? Think about that. And young people can no longer afford to buy a home.
All right.
Larry, I'll be listening to you tomorrow morning on number one show and on Saturdays, Larry Kudlow, 10 o'clock to 1 o'clock. And what are you going to be talking about? More about the economy?
Yeah, we're going to have good economy. We're going to talk politics. We're going to talk debates. We're even going to talk a little foreign policy. I'm going to crack a couple of jokes, but I'm not going to tell them ahead of time.
Long Island is more exciting than ever at Jake's 58 Casino Hotel. Get ready to zoom into some serious cash with Zoom Ball every Wednesday in June. Win up to $500,000. 1 point equals 1 entry. 2 lucky winners will be drawn at the top of every hour from 1 to 5 p.m. to play Zoom Ball. Discover the excitement at Jake's 58 Casino Hotel. If gambling is a problem for you or someone, please call the 24-hour toll-free helpline at 877-8-HOPE-NY or text NY.